Okay. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to the second part of today's topic, which is God and justice. And we had very positive feedback and quite a robust discussion on the previous sitting of this session. And we had a lot of questions that we did not take up. Today's session is going to take the form of an interview between myself and Sister Denise, and I would also invite you to put questions into the chat group if you so wish. So welcome back, Sister Denise.
Well, thank you so much. It's delightful to be here, and the question of God and justice has been coming up a lot in our conversations over here, so it's very timely.
Yes, so I don't really want to repeat what we spoke about last time, or rather what you mentioned last time, but the first question that I thought of when looking at the subject of God and justice is that there's a huge misunderstanding between who and what God is and who and what justice is. And that is a deeply entrenched belief in many people. Right? Could you tell us, Denise, who these two are, who or what these two are, and how they intertwine?
Yes, it is indeed a very widely misunderstood matter. The main thing is that people do not know about the law of karma, because justice is a matter of the law of karma, which causes everything to get equalized. So if something is done against someone, then the law of karma will equalize it by creating an equal and opposite consequence. And people believe that God is responsible for dispensing the consequences of karma. And this is because God is called the Supreme Justice. And there is a difference between the function of God as Supreme Justice and how the law of karma works. So basically it's like this. The role of God as Supreme Justice occurs at the end of the cycle of the drama. That means at the end of the procession of lives of different souls. And at that time, all the souls come up in front of God, and any outstanding accounts are settled. And if the person has made promises to God and gone against those promises, then that will be mentioned. So the big problem is that the conventional religions mix together the workings of the law of karma and the activity of God. So that's why we have to have a whole big spiritual university to educate people, and it's very difficult to educate people about this because the beliefs are not have not arisen on the basis of investigation of the matter, but on the basis of they have been told this is what it is and you have to believe it, and on pain of some sort of terrible consequence if you don't believe it. So this is the difficulty. So in our university, spiritual university, we go through the details of the laws of karma with everyone. And because most of the people of the world do not believe in reincarnation, they see things happening which appear to be unjust. And so they say, where is God? Where is justice? We can't understand anything, and we don't like all this. And so people are not really in a a mentality of being willing to take information in because of these preconceptions which are so strong.
When I was looking at the subject today in preparation for today's talk, one of the questions that came to my mind is everything as it seems?
Oh no, it is nothing is as it seems. And this is another aspect of spiritual study, which is that whatever you can see, you see through sense perception, and you see just a tiny section of the whole, which is called the present moment. And whatever is the long-term past, you don't see it, and you don't really understand who the players are. You just see their roles. And so then you have the appearance of something which is understood very differently when you know what we call the three aspects of time. And so in order for a knowledgeable person to evaluate what seems to be going on in your own life, then you need to take into consideration a clear understanding of the laws of karma, and you can ascertain it to some extent by being able to analyze what is going on in the light of the laws of karma. So you could understand that what's happening is a settlement of karma, or what's happening is a test of your spiritual robustness, or it is a matter of destiny. And most people can't distinguish these three things because they don't have the background of the information. So our purpose in the spiritual university is to clarify all these things and to offer study so that people can begin to see things as they are and distinguish between the reality and the appearances so that you can manage what's going on, because otherwise it's just unbearable, incomprehensible, and seems incoherent and definitely unjust.
There's many questions that arise, right? There's one's own karmic settling, your own debts that you faced with, and also for people who mean something to you, right? And the reality for most people, Denise, is when they face something harsh in their lives that feels like punishment. Most human beings go through an entire gambit of emotions, okay? And I think sometimes it gets worse if it's someone you love.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So how do you, in a situation where you faced with your own karmic suffering or someone else's suffering, how do you wade through this and keep your head above water?
Well, this requires spiritual power. And so part of the process of, studying Raj Yoga involves the accumulation of the power to be able to get through all of this. Because if you don't have the power, it's extremely difficult. And if you do have the power, it's really manageable. Not necessarily easy, but definitely there's a vast difference. So we need the clarity and we need the power. And also, in terms of you getting emotionally distraught when you see the suffering of someone else, is because of identifying with that person and because of attachment to that person, so that whatever's happening to that person is also happening to you. And so the process of spiritual study is that we have to really look at ourselves and understand this concept, which is called, we call it drama. That is to say, there is this predestined, gigantic film, three-dimensional film going on. We are all participants in it. And we're at a point in the big human story where everyone's karmic accounts have come up for settlement. So this is called the time of reckoning. And so this is why there is just problem upon problem, disaster upon disaster. And so people in these kinds of situations, when it gets really worst of the worst, then they turn their attention to God and they say, help, do something, give me strength, this kind of thing. And it is actually from God that you get the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding, the perspective, as well as the power to be able to get through this. Because it's not possible to avoid accountability. And it's very upsetting for people because you do not know what you did in previous lifetimes. And people who don't believe in previous lifetimes don't accept the idea. And so there is this tremendous feeling of injustice and incomprehension and, in a way, hatred for God and hatred for why is the world this way. And so all of the energies go into going against. You have an antagonistic relationship with what's going on. So what happens when you start to understand these spiritual matters is you shift your relationship with these disasters from an antagonistic one to one in which you look for the positive reason why it's going on. And for example, at this very moment, as we speak, and there are many people online who are from the Philippines, which is just going through a very major disaster. And it is very similar to one that happened quite a few years ago. And I had gone there at that time, and people had asked me, why did this happen? There was total destruction from the big super typhoon. And the teachings that we get tell us that why these terrible things happen is for two reasons. One is to make you experienced, and the other is to make you strong. And if you apply these two ideas, then it changes your relationship with what's going on. It doesn't make it any less terrible, but it does give it some sort of a meaning so that your relationship is no longer antagonistic, but that you are able to come closer to a sense of acceptance and being able to manage it.
Cushion, please.
Because when we're against the event, we have an antagonistic relationship with it, then all of our energy is spent in that, and we do not have any energy to be able to manage it. And so our teachings tell us that you must use your energy to manage what is going on, because it's a big test and you have to consider it as a test. And you also have to know that God is with you while you are going through this test, and God is not the cause of this test or the being who is making you suffer. But what is making you suffer is circumstances. You cannot say that you are responsible or to blame for something that is destined. And so one of the things that we learn is that this whole human story is a story of victory and defeat, a story of a great civilization which ultimately falls totally flat. And at the end, there is just a great war between the North and the South, the East and the West, the different religions, the males and the females, humanity and nature. Everything comes into total conflict. And this is a result of accumulated negative karma over a long, long period of time. And so the law of karma says all of this has to be settled. It is like this, it is destined. And what we need to do is get through it and in our power, not get overwhelmed by it. So we need to be really close to God, who accompanies us through this catastrophe and brings us to the other side of this particular set of circumstances, so that we can then receive the reward of our patience and our depth of understanding by listening to the explanations that can only come from God. So it's a completely different relationship with circumstances and with God.
What I've seen happening with many individuals is that when they're faced with intense pain and suffering, it is quite natural and easy at that moment or over a few years to adopt some type of victim mentality, and to ask questions like, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Why am I being punished? Okay, what did I do wrong? And there's rhetorical questions are asked and there's no answer that's obtained, right? And this happens to many good people who ask this question, but you feel like victims because you're faced with a tsunami of sorrow, right? So how does one deal with that, where you do not feel like a victim, but you literally feel that life is against you?
Well, that's exactly right. And the only thing that we can do is to say your relationship with these things is a choice. And this is why it was very important that you asked the question, is everything as it seems? And no, it's not. The real core problem is that you consider what's in front of you to be the totality. And we need to get a bigger picture. We also need to hear information that says you are a victim if you decide that you are a victim, if you tell yourself you are a victim, but that's not mandatory, that's an option. And so I think the most important thing we need to do is to tell people that there is another way to look at this, and that the strength to get through it is available. And so this is why our mandate, in a way, is to say, make your relationship with God a very good one, a very strong one, and change your ideas about what's going on, because your ideas are based on something that isn't true. And the interpretation of what's going on, you will say, well, this is what I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, experiencing. I'm experiencing these things, therefore, this is what it is. And what spiritual knowledge is saying, yes, it is there, but even though it's there, it doesn't mean that you are being punished. What the problem is people's interpretation of what they're seeing. And so in spiritual practice, we study how to grasp what the other possible perspectives are, because you have choice that you don't even know you have. And so this is why we have to study about it, so that we can be always aware. I feel like a victim, but it doesn't mean I am a victim. I feel like life is against me, but it doesn't mean that life is actually against me. Let me look a little closer and see what's really going on behind the appearances. Now, that is not easy for people who are right in the middle of the situation, but I did find, and I do find, in my interactions with people who are facing things, that once a person is open to thinking about their situation differently from how they are feeling it, it changes how they feel it. And it changes the self-talk, the thinking that's going on. Because the main problem in all of this is your interpretation and your thinking, which is going to give you much, much more suffering than the actual thing itself. So when you change your thinking, which you can't just change your thinking because somebody tells you change your thinking, that's not how it works. No, that's cruel to tell somebody that. But I think that the only circumstance in which a person can sit down and study these things is when things are going okay. And of course, nowadays, there's less and less time when things are going okay, and more time when things are really not going okay. I mean, everyone is under stress from COVID, and even more stress from COVID rules and regulations, and the fallout of losing job and uncertainty. And then there are a lot of natural disasters which are happening one on top of another on top of another. So it's very difficult for people to sit down and study in those circumstances. But for any of us who are in a reasonable situation, we need to use the time to really understand the times that we are passing through, and to learn how to meditate, which means how to take power from God, because the more we have inner power, as well as a positive interpretation, or an interpretation that is positive for you, then you can handle the situation as opposed to get overwhelmed by it. But one thing that I have to say is that there's nowhere to run. There's no escape. And the most important thing, two most important things. One is make your relationship with God good, so that you're not alone facing this. You're all the time with God. God is right beside you, and take strength from this. Secondly, you need to understand what's going on. And that means we have to see the bigger picture. We know that the world is in transition. We know that all of this is a process of purification, a process of cleansing. It is really the world as we know it is falling apart. Why? Because it can no longer carry on like that, and that this gives way to a very beautiful, ordered, restored, repaired, reconstructed, renewed world. And we ourselves are getting renewed in that, and the world around us and all the people. The other thing we are troubled with is this large amount of death and injury and physical suffering that we see around us. And so we need to focus our attention on the soul and really know that no one can be lost, no one can cease to exist. This is a matter of getting through very, very difficult times, and we will do it. So the certitude that I will get through this, that feeling, that attitude that you can very well take on to yourself, then you don't give up. You don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed. And especially when you have closeness to God, you can do it. When you don't create closeness with God, everything is too much, too difficult. And that closeness to God really makes a huge difference.
Sister Denise, one thing that does happen when it doesn't rain but pour, as far as one's karmic accounts is concerned, is it gives rise to a number of dark emotions within the soul, right? And I've written a few of them down. I'd like to deal with them in its compartments. The first one is when one is facing karmic accounts, especially a severe one, right? It's fear. I mean, the pandemic has emerged in many individuals fear. And not just that, I'm just using that because it's the uppermost thing in everyone's minds. But how do you deal with fear? Whilst bearing in mind that there is justice to everything.
Right. To me, the way that the pandemic is being reflected in the media is a big source of fear. If you do not experience all this massive material that's coming through the news and social media and the conspiracy theories and so on, you would deal with what you are actually experiencing. But because it is a pandemic, it is dangerous, there is a huge amount of uncertainty about how it happened, who's responsible. You're hearing all the stories which create fear. Then the governments are putting people into circumstances that are denying them their freedoms. And so that creates more fear and more uncertainty. And as a person who has studied the spiritual material of Raj Yoga and who meditates and so on, one thing that enables me to not have fear is that I'm very much in contact with my intuition, and I am not much influenced by all the media stuff, because when I get information from an outside source, I process that information, and it is an internal part of me. Is an internal part of me that makes an evaluation as to how real this threat is. And so my way, which is very much a consequence of the study and practice that I do, is to have a lot more faith in myself and then evaluate what's coming through and make a judicious, as far as possible, judicious judgment as to what I will do. And then you see, I have to take responsibility for the decision that I make. And so I'm in a very, very privileged position because I have had all these many years of thinking about these things and developing a spiritual practice which has empowered me. And I think that there are many people that I've encountered who are absolutely under the sway of all of the stuff that comes through the media. But there's a lot of people who are not, and they don't buy into it. And so they are at a great advantage, because you can see how the people of the world are getting manipulated by all of this, which is intensifying the fear. So I think that, it is realistic, I think, to say, yes, this is a very dangerous virus, and you have to take the proper precautions. And I did get COVID, but mildly. Some that I know very well got COVID really badly and got through it because they had presence of mind, strength, access to a good medical help, and so on. And there are many who have succumbed to it and who have suffered a great deal. But I've also spoken with a lot of people who are on the ground in the COVID situation, and who have said that a lot of the information that comes through the media is incorrect or biased, or they say they have certainty, but they don't. And so, you have to kind of take all these things with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because there seems to be definitely a desire from whoever is controlling all these messages that reach the public to disempower the public. And we need to understand that when there is something going on to disempower me, it is an option for me to not buy into it. But I have to take it seriously, but also not get overwhelmed with the fear. And so my statement is really, in the face of fear, you have the possibility of taking a step of courage. And there is a saying that when you take a step of courage, you get a lot of help from God. So if you're realistic, down to earth, common sense, courageous, and close to God, you are going to be able to manage your fear. Because if you allow the fear to take over, which is up to you, I mean, you do have a choice about this. Because in the face of fear, either you are courageous or fight, flight, freeze. And people just don't realize that they have a choice. Courage is a step that you take, a decision that you make, and you can do it. You just need to know that you can.
Well, that's certainly some food for thought. The other dark emotions that emerge when one is faced with karmic settlement, especially if it's through the hands of another human being or a group of people, is dislike, anger, hate, and the cherry on that dark cake is revenge. revenge. This is, this is the story of many people across the globe who are hell-bent on revenge, or even if it's not physical revenge, Denise, it could be thoughts of revenge or intense hate or intense dislike for the person who you think or actually did something to you that caused you sorrow. So how does one deal with those dark emotions that emerge and I think basically contaminate you and has the potential to destroy your entire life?
Absolutely. It's a very, very terrible thing. And you see it all around, this incredibly intensifying energy of hatred that is getting fanned in the social media a great deal. I'm currently in United States, and just the way the news media and how they deal with court cases that are going on is very much designed to intensify revenge, hatred, polarization, and that energy of wanting everybody to be against everybody is a very terrifying energy. And it's very easy to get swept up in it. And one needs a great deal of dispassion and detachment to not get caught up in it, because this energy is capable of bringing people to the point of bloodiest war, and you can see it coming. And this is itself very scary, because the signs of it are there. And I don't see very many voices or very many messages to the contrary. And definitely from my side and from all of the things that we try to do in our spiritual service aspect, is to get people to understand that if you do get caught up in it, then you're going to be swept away in this wave of a terrible violence. And so one of the things that meditation does is it counteracts that atmosphere. And it needs to be very, very strong, and very many people doing it to counteract that. But the force that is fanning the flames of violence and revenge is very sophisticated and very strong. So we do have to deal with it. We do have to be able to handle it being all around. So all I can do is say, understand with greater depth that this is the time of settlement, and all sorts of things are going to be happening, but we need to really take command of our emotions and what's happening. And the only way we can do that is to be very empowered, spiritually empowered. So it's urgent for people to acquire this. And even though it's urgent, the great difficulty is to get people to see that it's urgent and essential and necessary. But I see that people just go for that, and it bodes ill. It bodes very ill.
Another aspect that is one of the consequences, Sister Denise, of facing negative karma. We're largely focusing on negative karma because no one complains about good karma, do they? Right? Is when you're faced with any negative karma, it has a huge and negative impact on your sense of self-worth as a human being. Okay, because the mistake that most of us make as children, as adults, teenagers, adults, etc., is that we internalize it and we make false assumptions about ourselves because of something that happened to us. This is the victim mentality that I was talking about earlier. Okay, we don't see this as something happening. We think this happened to me, therefore I must ... Okay, and and there's certain things, Denise, that happens to people that becomes part of their identity. A negative experience becomes part of your identity, right? How do you extricate yourself from a mindset that is entrenched in you, where you've taken sorrow from a karmic account? Say, for example, being I'm thinking of 3 examples. One is being abandoned as a child. The second thing is being physically assaulted by someone. And the third thing is experiencing financial loss, which is the reality of billions of people in this world, those 3 examples, right? So if any of those things happen to you, it impacts so adversely on your sense of self-worth. How do you extricate yourself out of that to become a whole person, as opposed to somebody limping through life as a victim?
Yeah, the greatest problem is the messages people get. It's very much part of the culture, the culture of the world, whether you are in any of the great religious traditions of the world. It is patriarchal. The attitudes are biased against the victim. It's always said the victim is the cause of what happened to them. You are identified as a bad person, and you will be punished for the crime of the perpetrator. All of this is heavily in the culture, and the people who are suffering from these things will be looked down upon by privileged people. So all of this is to do with the attitudes that are entrenched, social attitudes that are in the culture. And the messages to make the person a victim do not come from the victims just thinking about, oh, this is my identity. No, that's put upon that victim from the people who talk to them and see them. And, this is done from childhood, and it's systematic, it's institutionalized, and it's global, it's extremely widespread. And to recover from it, you have to have other messages that are as strong, if not stronger, than all the messages that you have received through your whole life. And you have to change your relationship with those messages that you have been receiving and reclaim your power. Now, how many people can do that? That's very, very few. But at least through something like this conversation, we can begin to say, hey, you are not what they did to you. You are not what they keep telling you. And I have found, just as what I do, just one by one, challenging people to not buy into the messages that they are receiving, even right in front of me. And I will say to people, don't accept what's being put on you, because you're not that. And very, very many actually do open up their eyes and say, yeah, you're right, I don't have to. But I mean, this is just one by one by one, and this is just one person. But I think the more these kinds of ideas can be disseminated, and the more people get the idea that no, do not buy into what is considered to be right, when you can see very clearly that what people think is right goes against your conscience, goes against your sense of human rights, goes against your dignity, etc., etc. These messages from the culture do not have the validity that they claim. And it is becoming more and more visible. And that visibility is actually weakening these messages. And what's also happening is that there are many groups of people who have been systematically victimized as a group who are saying, this is what was done to us, and we are not buying it. And so this is actually coming into the global conversation, which is a very, very positive thing. So you have that on the one side, but then on the other side, you have this huge backlash energy that's going on, which wants to make this victimizing more and more institutionalized and validated and act on it. And there you get your aggression from the people who are in a position of power, whose power is being threatened and challenged by people who are not in a position of power, who are saying that your position of power has no validity. In a way, it's a little bit like the struggle in South Africa, where you are, where the apartheid idea was challenged. Otherwise, it was put in place by a set of people who thought that's what it should be, and it was described as correct behavior until somebody came along and said, that is not correct behavior. And so this is happening for many things, but the incorrect behavior, the energy of the incorrect behavior, and the energy of the emotional reaction to incorrect behavior is very strong. And the energy of having clarity and being stable in your power, that is not strong enough. So the most important thing is to strengthen that, because it is not widespread enough, it's not strong enough. It is a most urgent matter, but I believe that it will come through.
There are individuals whose pain and sorrow, and from the vantage point of today's talk, whose karmic accounts are so severe that they're wondering, what is the point of being alive?
Well, exactly.
What is your message to such person? And I hope such a person who's going through something like this is listening to your answer right now. What is your message for him or her?
I think the first thing is to know that you are loved by God, and that you are a child of God, and that God has compassion for what you're going through, and is not looking at you as someone who deserves to be punished. And if you have been told otherwise, you have been told lies. So this is number one. Secondly, these are very difficult times, and keep God with you, because what you need is the strength to get through it. And when you come into the thoughts that I might as well just die, this is really giving up on yourself. And when you have God beside you, who's looking at you as a valuable, important individual, and giving you that like accompanying you, being with you. Do not block that, because it is there. But if you block it, you will not be able to feel it. So you need to allow yourself to feel that you are not alone, you are accompanied. There is a higher power, a greater power, who loves and appreciates you as their own child, their own friend. And you are not abandoned. You need to really tell yourself this and cultivate faith in this, and really discount the messages that you're picking up from your life situation, because they're not the whole picture, and they're really not true. Your life is important, your life is valuable, and all these things will pass. So it's very important to hold yourself together and gather your strength and be with the Supreme Being, the higher power, and you get through this, and you will look back on it as a time where you really found yourself and you found your power. So this is what I would say. And I know that these are very, very tough times, but I also know that they will pass. It is the nature of circumstances that they pass, and we have to hold ourselves together and get through it. Because it's just a matter of getting through it. You are eternal, you are immortal, you are a spiritual being, and all of these things are there to make you strong and to make you experienced and to enable you to come into your power and rise above them. And you can do it.
Sister Denise, as somebody who is spiritually enlightened, what is your internal dialogue like? What is your narrative like as to how you manage illnesses, how you manage financial woes, how you manage people who have negative quality traits who are in your sphere? What is the version or the stance of somebody who's spiritually empowered? And I'm looking at it from a perspective of somebody who's not spiritually enlightened, who will go on the offensive, okay, neutralize all threats, get rid of this, take the obvious route. But your stance is different. Tell us how you have, what do you do with your 40 years plus of spiritual knowledge and power?
I tell myself not to convince myself, but just whenever something comes up. What very often happens to me is people look at me through a lens where, I'm non-compliant with the you can say the version of what I should be that people think, and then I just say, well, you can't see me, you're blind, not my problem. I'm perfectly okay. And you want to diminish me, I'm not going to get diminished. Sorry, have a nice day. I use this expression, have a nice day, quite a lot. As a way to just, prevent someone from getting in and influencing. I am very clear that there will always be somewhere to live, whether it's a palace or a hovel, doesn't make that much difference. And I will always have food to eat. There can be expensive food or inexpensive food, but there will be food to eat for me. And I'm not dependent on somebody giving me a position or taking away a position, because I have my own position. And my position is I'm a pure, peaceful, powerful, loving being of light, and I'm invisible. So obviously you can't see me unless you have clear vision. And so it's really about being in my power, asserting who I am, and not buying into people's attempts to manipulate me and diminish me, and oh, you poor thing, and I say, get out of here, go and enjoy your own karmic problems, but don't bother me. So you really need to be in your sense of self. And in our spiritual study, it's always said, do not come down from your seat of self-honor. You must honor yourself, realize who you are, and understand that there are a lot of people who take their own power by diminishing other people, and you don't have to buy into that game. There are lots of games that go on. We need to know the games and play in such a way that we don't become victimized. It's a cruel world out there at the moment, but you are something, and you have the higher power with you. And the more you have access to that, and the more you have access to spiritual information, the more you can change how you think about things, because it's entirely up to you how you interpret what's going on.
I'd just like to go through some of the questions that have come up in the chat. The first one is, how do we distinguish between a settlement of karma from a test of spiritual robustness?
One little thing that you can look at, and that is that when something comes along and happens to you, what is the first thought that comes? It could be, what did I do to deserve this? Or it could be, what's going on? So if the thought is, what did I do to deserve this? It can be an indicator that there is some karmic account being settled here. But what's going on may be there as well. And what's going on is a sign that, okay, there's an exam happening. Now you answer the question properly. That means you have to discern what's the test, what is it trying to strengthen in you, and rise to the occasion. So my personal policy is that whether it's a karmic settlement or not, I take it as a test. Because I find that if I take it as a test, then I'm much more in my power, and okay, here's a test, I'm ready, let's go, and I will take it. And I will, whatever adjustment is needed in the business of my character development, this test is going to be an instrument for bringing me to a higher level, making me more of a well-produced character, you can say. And it's only there to let me know that, yeah, I need a little polishing here or there. I'm doing something slightly not okay, so got the message, and off you go. So everything, I take it as an exam to pass, and you pass exams to go to a higher level. I take it as something that has a message for me, for some improvement of myself. So, okay, I get the message, I do the improvement and move on. And this is how I keep myself going ahead, feeling good about myself. And I am very connected with my conscience, you see. So as long as I have a clean conscience and I don't allow anyone or any situation to corrupt me and buy me and whatever, then I'm in my power. It's when you allow yourself to be compromised and to be corrupted and to give away your power, that's when you get in trouble.
A sister wants to know, how can we develop our intuition? This was following an earlier answer of yours as to, rely and hone in on your own intuition. So her question is, how do we develop ours? Can it be developed?
Yes, it can, absolutely. It has to do with your honesty. And the more clear you are, yes.
That's interesting. I would have linked honesty and intuition.
Yeah, because if you're not honest, then your conscience won't function so well. But if you're honest, your conscience will let you know, and that's your intuition.
Oh, wow! That was rather educational. I don't think most people listening to you would have joined those dots.
Well, I discovered that because usually you think intuition is something to do with special sensitivity of the mind, but
some feeling, some gift.
Yeah, but you can pick up all sorts of false things, and so your intuition, in that sense, will deceive you because you start having all kinds of feelings about something that's not really there. But the subtle capability to understand the games and to see what's going on and to see behind people's faces and their fronts and their performances and so on, or to just get what's going on. For that, you have to have a clean conscience. Because you can't be deceived.
Yeah, and I think, Sister Denise, one of the worst things to be in life is naive.
Oh, well, that's a big problem, yeah. And so all of these tests will get you out of that one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Denise, whilst we on the subject, on that particular subject, as far as your karmic settlements are concerned, does every cloud have a silver lining?
I would say it does, because everything has a reason, everything has a meaning, but you have to discern it. If you take it at face value, you get it wrong. And the more you realize your own personal value and importance, the more you will interpret things going on as being gifts rather than curses or something.
Okay.
Because you see, you are the center of your universe and everything that's happening is for you, but you have to be able to discern what is good about it, because it seems to be bad.
And we started off today's discussion saying not is all as it seems.
Yes.
Sister Denise, when I was younger, I used to read a lot of Khalil Gibran. And in one of his verses, he used to say that if you see your life as the 4 seasons, okay, you would appreciate your winter as much as you would enjoy your winter as much as you enjoy your spring. And I thought that very few people know how to do that. We enjoy our spring and summer. We clench our teeth through our own autumn and winter.
Well, that's because of the culture, which says, are you having fun yet? It pushes us into superficiality. It tells us all kinds of lies about what's what. It just tells everyone, you're as valuable as your body is sexually attractive, and you just should surround yourself with things that enhance your attractiveness and make you seem to be important and valuable. But whatever is behind it, don't even bother with it. And that is so damaging to the whole fabric of society. And we need to challenge these messages, which come from you can say the people in position of power are more like predators on those who they have power over. And that is a circumstance which leads to the disintegration of the society. And I think that all of these terrible things that are going on are signs of that. But at the same time, there is a new flower coming up. And when you start to think in this type of way, as we have been talking, then you're part of that new flower, and you're not part of the thing which is disintegrating. And it's just a matter of stepping off one and onto the other, because they're coexisting.
Someone else wants to know, how do we love and accept God's law of happiness and sorrow for half and half of your lifespan, according to the Sakar Murli of the 12th of November, 21?
Very good. Well, sometimes he says,
you touched on it just now when we were talking about the seasons. Yeah,
that's right. Sometimes he says, oh, half and half. No, that's not acceptable. Half and half. No. 3/4 happiness and half sorrow. If you want to go into the actual numbers of the Gyan that Baba gives us, if it's half and half, then you have 42 births in happiness, which is 3/4 of the cycle, and 42 births are a bit more challenging. But it's only really the last quarter of the cycle that is really challenging. And as an individual who's going through the cycle, and you are taking a lot of knowledge and power from God, you're also a person who would have passed through the period of devotion, as it is called, by doing a lot of charitable action, pure action, religious, motivated, good work. And this would have given you karmic credit, along with the various karmic debts that you got into, because life is not just everybody doing only bad things all the time. There's all sorts of good things that people do, along with the bad things that they do. So the reward for the good is there, and the reward for the bad is there. And that's not God's law. Some of the translations that you get are really quite worthy of being challenged, because when a translation uses the word God's law, the original text does not say God's law. It says that God knows the law and he tells you what it is, but it's not that he created it or is responsible for it. And so this, I noted that translation and I said, hey, you cannot mislead people like that. That's not acceptable. So I challenged these things quite vociferously. And God knows the laws of karma and tells us them so that we also know, but nobody created those laws. You can say, he says that he is the creator, director, and main actor of the drama. But it doesn't mean that he creates the sorrow. What he does is he enables all the souls to be in full power and full virtue and everything, and that's called the creation. And then he also knows that everything and everyone declines. And that is the nature of life on earth, whether it is animal, vegetable, or mineral, And souls go through sato, rajo, tamo. This is a law, not that he decided it, but that he knows it. And people believe in progress. They believe in evolution. Why? Because the authorities of the world, the human authorities, announced that it is like that, and they taught it in the schools and the churches and the mosques and the wherever. And so people believe something which is untrue. And then God says, by the way, I can tell you a few things, and that is going to make things much better, because I am known as the truth, and I will tell you the truth. And then it's up to you how you work with these concepts that are true, and that you also have to set aside concepts that are untrue once you realize that they're untrue. But the problem is that this untruth has been propagated by the authorities, and particularly the religious authorities and the legal authorities. That means the people who are in political power. That's the way it is.
We obviously wouldn't have time to go through all the questions. I'll try and go through as much as I can. Can you summarize how we can prepare ourselves for extreme global dangers that are coming?
Well, two things which I've already mentioned. I think, first of all, you have to really, really know that God is with you. And you have to stop blocking it and really be open. And that is that spend time with God, talk to God, be open to God, understand God, study what He says, and understand where you are preventing yourself from taking benefit, and stop doing that. And it takes time. But the main thing is you need strength. And so you need, the only place that you can get strength from is God. And so you need to open all the channels between you and God so that that strength can flow in, because God is there to offer it to you. But if you don't absorb it, then you won't get it. So it's a matter of being quite consciously open to it and focused on God, so that you can draw power, you can draw light, you can draw strength, and then you can get through it. Because God says, this is the time when you need me, and I'm here, but you're not using me. So use me, because I have everything you need.
Another question is, you mentioned earlier in today's talk, games, okay? You used the word games. So somebody wants to know, what kind of games are there in the spiritual world?
Well, welcome to the world. Power games, whatever you find in the non-spiritual world, you will also find in the spiritual world. Because you see, the thing is this, what people don't realize, they say, well, if God is there, then there should not be anything negative. And God says, well, it doesn't work like that. When God is there, the force of evil is there in maximum intensity, and you have to be able to distinguish the two. This is your test. Do you really love God? If you really love God, then you will be able to discern and resist the dark forces which are there circling around you all the time. And He tells us this every day. Watch out for illusion, delusion, negativity, Maya, Ravan, all of these various different words are there. Take it seriously. It's not just something for naive people. This is for serious people. And the reward of getting it right is that you really come into your power, and you are able to be a person of very positive influence in the world, which makes your life very worthwhile.
This is a question from Facebook. In the early part of my BK life, I was told that justice was not in the BK vocabulary because of karma. and the nearest word was equanimity. Would you care to comment?
Okay.
Ow!
Well,
maybe I should take a rest while you answer this one.
Yeah, there are lots of different teachers who interpret this in all kinds of ways, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But each and every one of us has direct access to the Murlis, and you just have to study it. Now, of course, one is limited by the translations, but I think that what we do have is we do have the third eye. So even if the translation is wrong, you'll feel it and you'll say, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And when you feel that, it means there is. And it's just that the translators are limited by their knowledge of English, their knowledge of Western culture, and so on is limited, but ours is not limited. So we can compensate for those limitations, and that's absolutely fine. And the other thing is that, when people use the word justice, it depends what they mean by that word. So if you say, if you say justice means that it should be as you think it should be, that's not a very good definition of the word justice. But a lot of people do think that the word justice means that if it is the way you think it should be, then that's called justice. That's a very narrow view of justice. We have to have a wider view. Now, the word equanimity, that comes up in the Gita. It comes up in a lot of Murlis. And equanimity is the attitude to have in the face of the pairs of opposites. And if you think that the pairs of opposites are the same thing as no justice, then you haven't understood the English language or the Gyan at all. And so, okay, whatever you were told, fine, but now you have to move on from that, because that was inadequate information for you. But what we're trying to do with these sessions, which are called explorations of Gyan and yoga, is to look at many of these concepts that are spiritual concepts and philosophical concepts, and to describe them and define them in a way that is that enables you to think it through and arrive where you have to arrive, which is called Sadgati. The Sadgati is always translated as salvation, which it really isn't. Sadgati is you arrive at the right place. And so what you want is a really clear understanding of the knowledge. You want to know how to process the ideas. You need to have a place where you can ask your questions and get clarification on exactly what this knowledge is. And so we're trying to provide that to the best of our ability. And we are hoping that it is serviceable. So we're doing our best here.
Okay, Sister Denise, we gave ourselves an extra 15 minutes because of our technical problems, and we literally have no time left. So unfortunately, we don't have time for the last two questions.
Well, maybe we should just take the last two questions if it's only two. What do you think?
Okay, I'll read both of them. Is it possible to reach the karmatic state in such a short time? Question, second last question, and the penultimate question. The ultimate question is, being a companion of God is so subtle. Do you think the more power we take from him, the more we can feel his companionship?
Both of the questions, my answer is yes. And stay tuned for reaching the karmatit stage, the image I would give you is the metamorphosis that takes place in a chrysalis for a caterpillar to a butterfly. That caterpillar melts, and it's only just before the butterfly emerges that the butterfly actually becomes a butterfly, and it's a very rapid process that happens at the end, but there's a lot that takes place to get to that point. And I think that, yes, you will definitely reach your karmatit stage, but in the meantime, you still are doing your tapasya, you are making your spiritual efforts, and keep going, don't give up, because all of a sudden, there it is, you will be free. And the second question, as much as you are close to Baba and open to Baba, that much you will get more power. And the more power you get, the more easy it is for you to connect with He who is very subtle. And you need power to get power. So, yeah.
Okay. This last question pops to mind just before we say goodbye to our 109 followers on Zoom, and I don't know how many more on Facebook.
Followers, no, companions.
Yes, yes, Sister Denise, we experience life through their thoughts and perceptions, but at the end of the day, I think it starts and ends with our feelings, right? How do you manage your feelings within the context of facing your karmic accounts and life? When you're managing life, how do you manage your feelings?
Well, there are feelings that come from sense perception, and there are feelings that come from how you process your sense perceptions, and they're different. How you process your sense perceptions is through your understanding, and you may feel insulted by someone. And in the knowledge, it says if you feel insulted, it means someone has activated your ego, and that's an ego reaction, that feeling of being insulted. And so when you are processing that feeling and identifying what it really is, aside from what it feels like, then you'll neutralize that feeling, because you will understand that it's deceptive. And then there are other feelings which are more close to your intuition and your more refined perception of what really is. And you're able to feel God, and you're able to feel who you are. And those feelings are very real. And so there is a big spectrum of feelings, all the way from false and deceptive to real and eternal. So just because you feel something doesn't mean that it's equally important as any other feeling. You have to be able to categorize your feelings just as you categorize your thoughts, which is to be paid attention to or to be discarded,
Yes, I think that we should bring our talk to a close. Sister Denise, thank you very much. I must say I enjoyed both these talks, the last one and this one, but today's one seems to have made a greater impact on me. And I hope that is the experience for all of you watching and listening as well. It is lovely to listen to somebody who speaks from experience and not theorizing. Yeah, that I appreciate about what you had to share today. Thank you very much. May I ask you to lead us into a meditation commentary before we say goodbye to everyone?
Okay. Well, meditation means, of course, turn within. Go deep into yourself to feel yourself and just know I am a pure, peaceful, powerful, loving being of light. Feeling yourself from within, you create distance from the projections and assumptions that people make and put on you from the outside. Stay introverted and then you're close to God. And there is a distance between yourself and sense perceptions. Stay close to God and close to yourself, and you are in your reality. Lose contact with that, and you get overwhelmed by a fake reality. Discern the difference, what's real, what's fake. Stay in your reality and be with the One. Shanti. And thank you to everyone. Have a good rest of the day or night. We're in so many different time zones, but here is just the breaking day from California.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We had quite a number from most continents across the globe. We have a Zoom audience and a Facebook audience, and we really appreciate you joining us. We hope that you are able to take Sister Denise's pearls of wisdom and put it into operation in your life. And wherever you are and whomever you are, we wish you a lot of love, and please stay safe.